Hello, thanks for tuning in. I want to give you 5 things that you can try at home, natural treatments, if you suffer from migraines, that are all non-drug approaches. Tip number 1, thing to try number 1, would be 1/8 of a teaspoon of fresh ginger in water at the onset of a migraine. There was a study that actually compared Imitrex, which is a major first-line drug that's often utilized at the onset of a migraine. It doesn't work for everybody, but it does seem to help some people. And zingiber, as it is called, the Latin name, was found to be just as effective with fewer side effects, I might add. If you're taking fresh ginger, number 1, it's a food, and you really, 1/4 to 1/8 of a teaspoon was how much was utilized in the study, and that was effective. Again, the timing has to be right, it has to be early on, at the start of a migraine. So if somebody gets auras or any kind of warning sign that they're about to experience a migraine, this is something to try. And again, keep in mind that it may work for you some of the time. Well, if it works some of the time, then keep it at your disposal. Keep fresh ginger on hand. It's going to cost you a few dollars to keep it in the fridge. That's thing 1. Thing 2, identify triggers. Keep a journal, a migraine journal, trigger migraine journal, where you record things you ingest, sleep patterns, exercise patterns. All of these things are known to, in migraine sufferers, are known to have influences. So it could be too much sleep, it could be too little sleep, it could be, of course, light sensitivity, smell sensitivity, foods. All these things can be triggers for people who suffer migraines. And keep in mind that these can change and are not always exactly the same. So be open to the idea that something that causes your migraine one time may not cause it the next time, or may worsen in time in terms of the trigger. So keep that in mind. Thing number 3, tip number 3, would be to avoid triggers, especially once you go, okay, I know that, chocolate or coffee can be one of those things where for some people it triggers migraines, other people it can abate their migraines. So avoid the things that you know to be triggers for you. Very often there's a connection to food allergies, to digestive type issues, likely through the gut-brain connection that we are learning more and more about every day. So keep that in mind. Number 4, change your diet. This is going to be a long-term effect in terms of influencing your chronic migraines. Not going to be something overnight, but definitely, because migraines, just like PTSD, is known to be inflammatory in nature, you want a diet that is anti-inflammatory in nature. So what would that be? Well, number 1, avoid sugar. Any kind of sugar, high fructose corn syrup that's thrown into nearly everything that's packaged or processed. White sugar, table sugar, stevia even. I know people in the health world think stevia is fine. Aspartame, and any kind of sugar you want to basically 86 from the diet. It's going to increase inflammation, and it does tend to blunt the immune response in general, and can increase the wrong interleukins, etc. So change the diet. Basically, you want to head in the direction of things that are going to increase the variability of the microbiota. What does that mean? That means increase the variety of the flora and fauna in the gut. And you do this through changing your diet. There's a lot of research that indicates that over time, especially in transitioning to a different kind of diet, the bacteria in the gut will change given enough time. Now, in the beginning, you might have symptoms like gas and bloating because your body's not used to eating a lot of beans, etc. So keep that in mind. and persist through that interim period where you have a little more GI stuff. More plants, more whole foods, less processed crap. That's the gist of it. Meat, in particular agri-industry meat, is known to be highly inflammatory, as is dairy. So decreasing those and eating plenty of plants is going to change the microbiota in the gut. And in fact, there's research. We don't know the cause, again, of migraines, but it looks like GABA is one of the players in migraines. And one theory is that, so GABA in the gut is one of the most prolific neurotransmitters that's secreted in the gut, or in the gut, I should say. And what happens is you have certain bacteria that actually, through their metabolism, poop it out and create more GABA, which tends to be calming on a lot of receptors. There are other bacteria that tend to consume GABA. And so one of the going theories as in terms of what causes migraines, or at least influences migraines, would be too much or too little, like imbalances with GABA could be part of the culprit in terms of what causes migraines. And again, gut-brain connection. So certainly the microbiota is going to be influencing, or I should say, not certainly, is likely to be part of the picture in terms of chronic migraines. So keep that in mind. And again, we know this through the HPA Axis. We know this through polyvagal theory. There's a lot out there in support of that. Thing number 5 that you can try would be to manipulate the circulation in the brain with the use of hot and cold compresses. So one of the theories out there in terms of certainly something that exacerbates or is part of the picture for what's happening with migraines would be changes in the circulation in the brain, in terms of is it vasodilation? Is it vasoconstriction? Nobody really knows. I've looked at this because I was interested in nitric oxide as part of this picture, and because nitric oxide tends to be something that vasodilates or causes vasodilation downstream. And one theory a while back that I saw was that people who suffer migraines may be low secretors of nitric oxide in general, which would lead to them having less capabilities in terms of vasodilation. And so eating foods that increase nitric oxide content may be one way of helping with the chronicity of decreasing migraines. That's a theory that's out there. But just knowing that circulation is, platelet aggregation, this is partly what's happening. There's inflammation going on. So manipulating the blood flow to the brain may be useful. So how would we do that? Well, just know the basic principles of hydrotherapy, which would be cold, short cold, I'm going to say, tends to cause vasoconstriction. Hot compresses, tends to cause vasodilation in the blood vessels that are underneath wherever you're at on the skin. So if when you have a migraine, a cold compress actually feels good and helps to reduce the pain, it might be the case that your migraine in that part where you have the pain, that there's a lot of vasodilation going on, and so the cold compress is actually relieving the pain by causing some constriction of those blood vessels. If hot feels good, the opposite might be true for you. So utilizing, based on the pain picture, going towards one or the other, I think is something worth trying. The other thing would be to keep in mind alternating the two can pump the blood in and out of a particular area. So if you start with hot, go to cold, back to hot, and keep it the time frame fairly short, meaning basically under 5 minutes for hot and under 1 minute for cold. then you won't cause stasis. So long-term heat and long-term cold will both cause stasis of the blood. The blood will, the leaky blood out of the blood vessels will end up kind of persisting in that area, and you'll get more swelling, and that could actually contribute to more pain. So think about, listen to what feels good, but also alternating, right? Because cold, sometimes it's the numbness factor. So that's something to try. The other thing is, if you have a congestive type headache, meaning a headache from crying too much because your boyfriend broke up with you, and your head is full of snot, you're congested. One of the things you can do that almost provides immediate release is to put your feet in hot water, because of the closed circuit of the circulatory system. When you affect one part of the circulation, you actually affect the other. So you will draw the blood out of your head a little bit into your feet, and that will draw the congestion out as well, which will help relieve some of the pain. Works like a charm. I've seen it many times. Something worth trying if it's that kind of a headache, a congestive type headache, say from crying all night. The last thing to try, I would say, would be homeopathy. Certainly something I do in my practice a lot. I don't talk about it much on this channel, just because I would rather avoid the haters. And homeopathy is pretty controversial, but suffice it to say that I've seen some intense, I had a case of an intractable migraine that had been going on for a year, where lots of other stuff had been tried, really wasn't getting relief, and the patient was to the point of being suicidal, really, from the pain of, I want to escape this, and I've had this now for a year, so please help me out of this pain. And homeopathy was the only thing we did, and it worked amazingly well. So I don't want to get into a big debate over homeopathy, so again, largely why I don't talk about it on this channel. But keep in mind, if you do want to try homeopathy, you should find a reliable prescriber. Not all homeopathic treatment is created equal. Some of it that's called homeopathy is not homeopathy at all. So keep that in mind. And be open, be a little open-minded to trying it. Like I said, there's a lot of haters. A lot of the stuff you read out there is not accurate, and just keep that in mind. So, wow, okay. 13 minutes later. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this is useful, and thanks for all the YouTube love. Feel free to share, like, subscribe. Any of those things are hugely appreciated and help get the word out about this kind of stuff. Adios.